So let's jump into some numbers here. So Jamie, let's say your last 3 or 4 transactions you've done there. Can you give us just a rough range on price per door you're seeing, cap rate? I know it's going to change by neighborhood, but for someone unfamiliar with the area, can you provide some maybe general statements? Then we'll break them down further.
Sure. So again, I think you need to start by saying Evanston's a low velocity market. So some of these average metrics are really skewed depending on what type of property transacts in any given year. On an average basis, last year, we saw cap rates close to 5%. So the average cap rate for transactions that were 10 plus units were right around 5.12%. On the higher end, we might see something transact closer to a 6.5 cap. And that's when you're getting a little bit farther away from the train lines. You may be getting into neighborhoods that, are a little bit farther away from the lake, or again, public transportation, the university. So some of those more fringe Evanston locations, they're going to offer a little bit higher rate of return that's associated with more risk that you're taking on. So a lot of these buildings too are older. They haven't transacted in a very long time. So you'll find that rents are compressed and they're not at market levels. So you're at a lower going in cap rate and a much higher gross rent multiplier for that reason. Someone's going to plan to come in, do the work, bring rents to market, and their metrics are really going to change depending on that first year of work that they do to get the building stabilized.
Okay. So let's say I'm east of the tracks. I have a dated unit, functional, but has been updated in 15, 20 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What can you give us a rough idea? Like, what does that 2.1 go for? And then if you do the rehab, you put laundry in the unit, what are some things you can do to bump that rent? And what does that, I'll call it, ceiling look like?
Sure. So I think east of the tracks, for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit, you're probably looking somewhere between $1,400 and $1,600 a month in rent. If it's a little bit more vintage in condition and it has perhaps landlord paid radiator heat, it doesn't have an in-unit washer dryer. I think if somebody comes in and does the work and brings it up to sort of a modern kitchen and bath, they add in some in-unit washer dryer and individual HVAC, you're getting closer to that $1,975, $2,000 range. I do think that you see that $2,000 cap out a little bit with a 2-bedroom, depending on the offering. But for that vintage rehab, yeah, you could definitely expect to see, anywhere between a $200 to $300 increase for doing the work and a monthly rent.
You truly are a broker. Vintage sounds so much better than dated.
Vintage charm, right? Lots of vintage charm to be had in Evanston.